Welcome to the podcast for Refuge City Church. We hope that the message today blesses you and inspires you to be a refuge that embraces others.
So first of all, thank you for having me here and such a warm welcome. And second of all, I don't know if you understand what it is that you people did. For most Jews, that symbol is kind of like a biohazard sign. Judaism and Jews have suffered from anti-Semitism and from persecution of the church for a millennium.
That's very true.
And that's what we know. It's not the Holocaust, it's 1,000 things before that. And then since that, so when the war broke out, and what happened in Israel is that the army called up 360,000 reservists. It has never, ever called up 360,000 reservists, ever. Not even the Yom Kippur War. And they called them up, everybody, on the 7th. Usually what happens, for those of you, a very large section of you who have been in the military, you're more familiar with it, but for those who haven't, what happens is they call up part of the army, they give them all their equipment, give them their vehicles, put them, send them off, take a division, send them off. A few days later, they get a division, they send them off. And that way, everybody has time to get their act together and get their equipment. That's not what happened on the 7th. On the 7th, everybody was called up, and everybody was dispatched by the 8th. And simply what happened is that we just weren't ready for that, and we didn't have enough of everything that we needed. And even some of the stuff that we had, when we bought it 20, 30 years ago and put it in some very big army warehouse, you can just imagine from that movie with Harrison Ford. One of those stuff, there's this scene where there's a warehouse that's a mile long, right? So, all the stuff is over there. It's been sitting on the shelf for 20 years, 30 years. It looks like it's been sitting on the shelf for 20 and 30 years. Since they made it, there's new technologies, new materials, and so on and so forth. And so we found ourselves lacking in some things that were going to make the difference between, I'll give you a simple example, safety glasses, right? We just didn't have enough of them. And when you throw a hand grenade or shoot, and there's a ricochet, if you have safety glasses, then you keep your eye, and if you don't, then you lose it. And so there's a lot of little things and a lot of big things. And as time wore on, more and more things happened. Let's say myself, I was drafted on the 7th. For weeks I didn't come home, and then actually for months I only popped in and popped out. I came home. When I did come home, I came home at 1 o'clock in the morning and left at 5. So, I was joking with some of my soldiers, and I was telling them on the Saturdays, when possible, I let them go home because I'm 65, they're much younger than I, and they all have little kids. So I said, you go home for the Sabbath, because my kids are gone, so it's not that big of a deal. And and I said, besides that, I don't even know if my wife notices when I come home. So one of them said,
she notices.
So one of them said,
we love you, Lisa.
Yeah. So one of them says, of course she does. And I said, how do you know? She says, she writes it on Facebook. I don't have Facebook, so I don't know. So she notices that I came home. But let's say my son, who was also drafted, has 2 little kids at home. One's, when the war started, was 5 months old. No, was 4 months old, and another son who is about 3. No. Yeah, about 3 when the war started. And he wasn't home for weeks, and weeks and weeks. And the toll is not only on us. We soldiers, those who have been in the military, it's hurry up and wait, right? And then you sit down and you're drinking coffee for 3 days, nothing happens, half an hour, all hell breaks loose, and then you sit down again for 3 days. But our wives are taking care of the kids all of the time. My wife stopped working. She went to be a full-time grandma, babysitting all over the place, and helping out. And so when you people opened up your heart and you to help us, after I called Jim, it was unbelievably heartwarming for me and for our men and women, because we also have women in our unit, that you care. Because what we're hearing is blatant anti-Semitism everywhere. And
Not here.
not here. And that's what I'm saying. That's what, for us, was a very big difference, and which in itself caused a discussion, because my men we get into regular Jewish education inside of the State of Israel, and so they're not aware of congregations like yours and their theology. And so so that gave me the opportunity to talk about you and your congregation and Jim and so on. And so I think that opened up a door in people's hearts to see that there is more than just one approach to this. So this is to honor the Refuge Church of Klamath Basin for its assistance to the 99th Division Halimatim. That's what I command. Iron's Swords War. May the Lord bless and protect you. Adonai Yevachecha v'yishmerecha. That's from the priestly benediction. So thank you very much.
Have a seat. No, you sit down. They're honoring you. I can say on behalf of everyone here this morning, we're very humbled, and it's very heartwarming for you to be able to have opportunity to let soldiers on the front lines of Gaza a few months ago know that there was one congregation in the United States of America that was not anti-Semitic and did not have that theology, and that the cross was not a hazard word, a biohazard word. Means more to me and us almost than you would ever know, because as I've been explaining to you, when the Jewish culture hears of a Christian, that's umbrellaed in every ideology of Christianity out there, from Roman Catholics to Jehovah's Witnesses and everything in between. They only know Christian is Christian. They don't know the different sects. They don't know the different theologies. They don't know the different breakdowns. They don't know the different segments and the different doctrinal nuances between Christians. Everybody understand, I'm not trying to put that in quotes, but there are quotes there if you know what I'm talking about historically. And he was very honest. He said, Pastor Jim, us as Jewish people don't know that. We have been persecuted so long. And if you know your history, they're not teaching history anymore, but I know a lot of you do. If you go back to the Crusades, that was because of Christ. If you go back to the Spanish Inquisition, that was because of the Roman Catholic Church, thus Christians in Christ. If you go back to Germany, the manipulation that Hitler utilized was because of Christ to obliterate the Jews. So when he says that symbol, which we love so much, is not positive for them, that's why, and there's truth to that. Everyone understand what I'm saying? Because it's been used as a battering ram for them. You talk about genocide, the anti-Semitism is that the Jews are totally annihilating Hamas. The truth be, and he's going to share a little bit of this, if they would give back the 134 people, they would stop. They're causing this themselves. So I want you to think, if someone, say, we were bordered with the country with Northern California, and they came into Klamath Falls and stole and raped your women and beheaded your babies, your grandchildren, and they still had 134, would you stop? Would we stop? So I think and I don't want to say this as a reproach, but I think sometimes our American lack of being visible, never having a war in our backyard. He was sharing with Sean, one of our safety team members, in my office just a few moments ago that they were chasing terrorists. He lives very close to Gaza. Matter of fact, he'll show some things with his daughter that actually was in lived in the village that got attacked, and she, because of her wedding, she wasn't there. He'll explain all that in a minute. But he had to send flares. He had to call out. They were chasing terrorists, and he had to ask the Air Force to drop some flares so that they had light to be able to see the targets that they were taking care of. And his son called him on the phone and said, "Dad, what's happening?" off his back porch as a little boy. Okay, that was years ago. We don't have that off our back porch. We get to hear the sound of freedom. You hear what I'm saying? We get to hear that sound all the time flying over us, but we don't have that like they have. You know, they're at a festival enjoying a holiday, a Jewish holiday, and all you know what breaks loose. So with that, Amos, I want to ask. First of all, I want to ask a spiritual question. I know the Jews, all Jewish people, are instructed to read the Torah on a cyclical basis. I would like to ask you, before we get into the depth of the war and all of that. This is going to be a little bit different. Is this okay this morning that we're doing something a little bit different? So, we've had some powerful spiritual application in worship, but this is just going to be raw and real, okay? I want us to have understanding of what's going on, and we don't get. How many places do you think are going to get this in the United States? I'm humbled that he would fly here to be with us, and then I have to take him. He's going to sleep in the airport tonight in Medford and then fly out at 5 o'clock to continue this. And I want to say that to you. I want to say this to you, Amos. Your book, hold your book up. He wrote a book. He's traveled around for, it's called The Path of Peace. This was written, what year did you write this?
Started writing in 2000, got published in 2015 or 2000.
2015. It's got his picture on the back. But basically, it, for lack of a better word, it is his journal or his will, an ethical will that he was writing for his children that someone got a hold of and said, you need to give that to more than your children and your children's children and your grandchildren. And I don't know if I'm in the forward here, but you asked me to be. Oh, thank you. Okay. So I would urge you, if you want to know how to get this, we'll have this available. He's like, I don't want to show my book. And I'm like, too bad, I'm showing it. Because how many know God calls for peace in the peace of Israel as well? And so anyway, tell us, here, let's get to our questions, because we're going to be here all day, and then second service is going to come in and not know what to do. What are you reading currently in the Torah, and how's that speaking to you? Give us where you're reading right now.
So as Jim said, do I call you Jim or Pastor?
Jim's fine, dude. Jim. You'll freak me out if you call me something else.
Hey, you. So as Jim said, we read the Bible in a cycle. And now we're at the end of the book of Exodus. In the end of the book of Exodus, there's two main events. One event is the golden calf, and the other event is the building of the tabernacle and its dedication in the desert. And so there's a few interesting things about that. You people read the Bible in English. I read the Bible in Hebrew. And so there's a very big difference. Yes. So when Moses doesn't come off the mountain, it says, Vayikel that the people gathered together. He comes down from the mountain. There's the golden calf. What happens, and then afterwards he collects the people in order to build the tabernacle. And it's Vayakel. One is with an A and one is with an E. It sounds to you the same, to us it sounds different. And what is the difference? The difference is that the first one, what it means is that the people just gathered together. They became a mob. You become a mob and you act like a mob, and then you have a golden calf. But the other one means they were brought together. They were brought together by Moses' direction. And so you have a purpose and you have leadership. So it's the same people. It's the same verb. There's just one vowel that's changed. And it completely changes the meaning of what's going to happen. Now, the big difference also is that Moses gives them purpose. Moses says, we're going to build the tabernacle, and everybody is going to give to it. But what else is happening in their minds? They just messed up royally. They were taken out of Egypt. This is the generation that saw God in the desert. This is the generation that saw God on the mountain. And they still messed it up. And Moses is saying, okay, let's sit down, let's breathe, let's find purpose, let's find community, and let's fix it. God is willing to let us fix it.
Did you guys get that?
And then what does he do? He says everybody has to give half a shekel in order to build this thing. Now, why do that? I don't know. I'm a big real estate guy, and I have millions and millions and millions. And Jim is a poor farmer, and he has...
Preacher.
It's a preacher. Right? Preachers do better than farmers.
Yes. Ooh. Good job, Bubba.
Yeah.
Good job. Look at him smile.
I live on a farm.
That's what he does to me on the bus, too. That's the only time he smiles.
But everybody gives half. Why? We're all in this together, and we're all in this equally. Nobody gets to claim, that I've done more. But then, when you look at it, God gives us instructions. This is the length of the pole, and this is the type of wood you're going to use in the pole, and they're going to have this many rings, and the rings are going to be made out of this material. And then you're going to have the cloth, and the cloth is going to look like this, and it's going to be this high. It's going to have bells on the bottom. It's going to have this. Why does God care? God is God. God actually doesn't need any of this. Wow. God is God. Everything that God commands us none of it is because God needs it. God is God. We need it. We need it. So why does God bother giving such detailed explanations? Because we're people, and God knows what's going to happen. If this is my doorway to salvation, then I'm going to pour everything I can into it. And God says, no, that's not what I need. I don't need anything. I'm God. I don't need your sacrifices. I don't need anything from you. I'm God. You need them. But what I do need you to do is to look at your neighbor, and deal with your neighbor. Wow. If I let you guys go free, this is going to be insane. If you look at some of the churches that are built, and you know how much money goes into them over the centuries, I don't know. When I take the group around in Israel, so we come to the church of Mensa Christi, and I always say this is my favorite church. Why? Because it's a very simple stone church. It's very simple. And if I think of Jesus doesn't want the cathedral that's 700 meters tall, or feet tall, and is all gilded with gold. He doesn't want that. God doesn't want that. God doesn't need the gold. God needs you to take the gold and keep your part of what you need, because you have to take care of your family. You have to take care of yourself. You are just as sacred as I am and as he is. But if he needs help, you have to help him. So God says, this is what I want of you, not more, no less, but not more. Why? Because what you need to do is your fellow man. And so when I
good message.
Look at that. So when I think of what we're learning this week, it brings the whole people together for a purpose. This war brought us all together for a purpose. Just like you guys now have in the States a lot of political debate and controversy, and excuse me, you don't have political debate. You have political screaming at one another. Nobody's listening to anybody else.
Well said. Well said.
We've, sadly to say, have stopped talking to each other. We talk at each other, and that's on a good day. Usually we're just busy screaming. This war, so in Israel it's the same, but this war brought us all together. When we, figuratively, we weren't using trenches, it's not the war in Ukraine, but when you're standing in the trenches or doing our operations, we were all of the same persuasion, all of us. From the first to the last, from the general down to the private. We have a mission, and that is to protect the people of Israel, get back our hostages, destroy this organization called the Hamas, and there is no discussion. There was no political debate. There was no question of opinion. This brought us together like the building of the tabernacle, brought the people together, but under leadership, as opposed to just bringing them together as a mob, brings us the idol. So that's more or less what I've been thinking.
Thank you. Yeah. Wow. So I know this is going to be difficult for you, and I'd like some of you to begin to pray for Amos now. From your own heart, and I know you brought some pictures, I thank you for that. Can you express for us what the massacre on October 7th ignited and created with Israel and with you, because it touched your family? And I'm not going to steal your opening story of the picture of your daughter in her wedding, but
I'm going to do it anyhow.
Good, that's good. That's
You're
good.
going to do it.
That's right. But I would like you just to unravel for us, from your perspective as a high-ranking officer in the IDF, being in Gaza. You're going to show us some pictures in the tunnels that didn't make the press, and how that looks and everything. Matter of fact, I want to pray over you, if you don't mind, Amos. Father, I thank you for this next question, and Lord, the depth that Amos is going to express. Some of it is very gentle for him, because it involves people that he loved. It's not distant foreign lands. It's not distant individuals. Lord, he knows them by name. And Father, I just ask that you'll just bless his presentation and give us understanding to it now. In your name, amen. The floor is yours, my friend.
So before I start, I want to say just a few disclaimers. I don't talk for the Israeli government, and I don't talk for the Israeli army. I talk for Amos. Everything that I tell you is things that I saw with my own two eyes, or my subordinate officers and soldiers saw, which to me is the same thing. If they reported this, I believe them 1,000%. What I want to do is I want to try to explain to you, give you a little bit of background, give you a little bit of information, and maybe answer some questions that are in your mind and that you might have heard about. As Jim said earlier, some of the words used in the press today that will and give you relate to that. Also, so first of all, so you understand, and second of all, for if somebody asks you, and you'll be able to give a somewhat intelligent answer about it. For those of you who've served in the U.S. military, there's a fundamental difference between our military and your military. The United States military is there to project the strength of the United States of America across the globe for its own interests. The IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces, are there to protect the Jewish people living in the land of Israel. I never go beyond my border unless it is to attack somebody who's attacking me from their border. I'll go and Personally, I've gone into Egypt, I've gone into Syria, I've gone into Jordan, I've gone into Lebanon, and I've gone numerous times into Gaza. So our job is different. We fight. The farthest place I can fight from my home is 150 kilometers, so that would make it about...
From here to Lakeview and back?
Maybe 150 miles, let's say. That's the farthest I can go. And in most places, if I go 20 miles, I'm already in a different country, while swimming in the sea. So it's a whole different strain of thought. And as I said, as Jim said earlier, if they get through me, they're on my back porch. And so for those of you who are not military, war is a whole different ballgame. For those of you who have not experienced, you're blessed. And may you never, ever experience it. But there are certain things that are part of that are just part of it. And that's one of the most disturbing things is death. Violent death. And so things that to when you talk to another military person who has gone through war and you say something, they'll just accept it because it's clear to them. Or it's an expression that they can understand, right? When one infantryman from doesn't matter what part of the world talks to another infantryman and says, I was walking point, everybody knows exactly what they're talking about. If you're talking to a civilian, they don't. And so, so some of the things that I say might make more sense or less sense depending what your background happens to be. So I'm going to start, and I made a little PowerPoint so you guys could see. Can you turn it on? So if you look at this, what you're looking at is my daughter. Oh, 1 second, if I turn this on, it probably works better. Yeah, it does. This is my daughter, my youngest daughter. That's my baby. And she's getting married. She got married on the 28th of September. If you look in the background, you can see that we're outside. She lives right next to Gaza. This party is taking place right next to where that other party took place, where they killed 240 people. If they would have come a week earlier, or we would have done this a week later, I would have been standing here. This is her brand new husband of, I don't know, maybe there it's 2 hours or something like that. This is his father. The two of them are on the rapid response team of Kibbutz Givim, which is where they live. The kibbutz was attacked 3 times. They managed to repulse them each time. They lost 1 member of the kibbutz and 3 were wounded, as opposed to other kibbutzim nearby where they lost 100 people. And people were taken as hostages. If you see, this is their security vehicle, and you can see it's filled with bullet holes all over the place. It's missing its window and so on. We had guests that came from the States for the wedding, because both my wife and I were originally born here. And when they got home afterwards, they freaked out because they understood all of a sudden how close it is and how personal it is. Now, she lives, my daughter, both of them live right now in Gaza. So all that age group is the age group that suffered the most. Hundreds of their friends were killed. All around them, they live in these little small villages. Can you please change this slide? And this is what it looks like. This is Kibbutz Kfar Aza, and this also. Now, you have to understand, some of the places that they attacked were military bases, but most of the places that they attacked weren't. They were just villages. It's like coming into Klamath Falls, and wherever you meet, and then you kill. In order to take it back, we had to bring in tanks. This is an Israeli tank inside of another kibbutz, Kibbutz Be'eri. This is where I started the war. Okay? Can you switch? Another one? War is not new to this region of the world. It's been going on forever. And you know it from the Bible. Right? There's going to be So what happens in this region, there's four main empires. There's a southern empire, Egypt, a northern empire, depending on what moment of history, Hittites, Greeks, Romans, Turks, whatever. Assyria, Babylon, Mesopotamia, and Iran. Why are they empires? Because they have rivers. You have a river, you can create yourself a surplus, you buy yourself a professional army. Professional armies are always better than non-professional armies. So when these guys want to go after these guys, they can't go this way, so they go this way. And everybody and their brother comes through here. Those of you who have been with me to Israel and have been with me to my house, I live in Kibbutz Gezer, which is right over there. And so where I live, when I go in the fields around my house, I find relics from the First World War, I find relics from the War of 48, and Napoleon, and the Romans, and the Greeks, and I recently even found a Chinese coin, the only ancient Chinese coin ever found in Israel. Thutmose III, the Egyptians, the Babylonians, the Assyrians, Joshua comes through there. You guys are familiar from that in the Bible. And then there's Pharaoh who comes there, and then he gives it to his daughter, gives it to Solomon, and so on. So this little piece of real estate over here has been fought over forever. Time is going to go by, and the world is going to become industrialized. What you need for industrialization, amongst other things, is oil. These guys have oil. The First World War ends. What is the First World War? The First World War, Reader's Digest condensed version, agricultural-based empires out, industrial-based nation-states in. That's what it's about. Everything else is just details. So they're going to come over here. See, this is British. This is Haifa. That's also British. Why? They take a pipe, and they take the oil from here and move it over there. The French are going to do the same thing over here and take it out over there. Oil becomes a big deal, and people are willing to fight and die over this. Next slide. What's happening now, 2024? Europe used to get oil from Russia. Ukraine war doesn't work anymore. So they're trying to build a new pipeline. And Biden talked about it just before the war. He said, we're going to build this train that goes from India into Europe. And below that train track is going to be a pipeline. And that's what the Abraham Accords are about. Right? Are you familiar with the Abraham Accords? Yeah? Israel signing agreements with some of the Arab countries around us. And that is going to go, the oil is going to go in this direction, go over here, go to Haifa once more, and come out and go to Europe. You are looking at trillions of dollars. Freight trains of dollars. That's what you're looking at. And that's what got the Hamas to do what it did. Because we were about to sign an agreement with Saudi Arabia, and they understood that if we sign an agreement with Saudi Arabia and Saudi Arabia starts making money in mega doses, who's going to count the Palestinians? Nobody. So before we got to sign that agreement, they attack. This is all Shia. Can you switch the slide, please? This is the Muslim world. This map is not a very good map, but we'll just use it because it's easy. This is Shia Islam, all the dark. This is Sunni Islam, much more Sunni Islam than Shia Islam. It's kind of like, but not exactly. I'm just making it simple so I can move forward without too much time. It's kind of like Protestants and Catholics. Everybody's Christian. They just have differences that they can, and some of these differences you cannot gap. Right? The issue of the Pope and all kinds of, the place of the church and forgiveness and whatever. So what happens over here? What are we looking at? So the same thing with Shia and Sunni. And each one of them believes that at the end of times, all of you and me, we're all going to become Muslim. If you happen to be Sunni, all of us are going to become Muslim Sunni. If you happen to be Shia, they believe that all of the Sunni Muslims are going to become Shia, and all the Christians and all the Jews and all the Hindus and all the Buddhists and everybody else that happens to be out there, everybody is going to accept their version of Islam. So this is Iran. They've taken over Iraq. They've taken over Syria. They've taken over Lebanon. So actually what they did is that they split the Sunni world in two. The Arab Sunni world and the Asian Sunni world. Iran is a theocracy. They think, the government thinks in terms of their understanding of end times. And this is what they're after. Why are they, what's the problem with Israel? We don't even have a border. There's two countries between us and them. Big countries, not small countries like Israel. Why? Because these guys are Persians. These guys are Arabs. They're not buddies. So how do you get into the hearts and minds of these guys? You mess with Israel. And that's what we're seeing. Okay? You are hearing the news about Gaza. I'm an officer in the Israeli army. I'm not worried. I'm worried about Gaza. But I am being shot at from Iraq, from Syria, from Lebanon, and for some reason from the Houthis down over here. All of these people are shooting at me besides Gaza. I have to protect myself from all of this. And there's one thing that is true for all of these countries. All of them get their arms and their training from Iran. Okay, next slide, please. This is what Gaza looks like. It's over here. My daughter lives right over there. I live right over there. Okay, next slide. They came in on the 7th. They came in these pickup trucks, as you can see, and in, I don't know what you call those things in English, those things, and motorcycles, and they came in and they abducted people. You can see a young woman, a Holocaust survivor, some young men. This is that party that was over there, and they just slaughtered everybody that they met, except for the people that they took away, and except for the violence that they did to some of the people. There are children present, I'm going to be. And they went into the people's houses and just butchered the people that they met. Next slide. This is one of their trucks. Here you can see two Israeli sappers. Those are the people who take care of the explosives, going through the truck. This is all the stuff that they didn't get to use, right? Because they got stopped beforehand. Wow. Can you please play this video? This is, I came, when we left, I had to go and deal with all of these vehicles. That's one of their motorcycles. These are just civilians. None of this is military. All of this is civilians. I had to go through the cars because I had to go through the cars. Baby seats filled with bullet holes and blood. The whole car is just, and it's very easy to see, you know, what do you find? They find a pocketbook, so it's clear that it's a woman and not a, and this just goes on for kilometers after a kilometer. They just, everybody they met, this is how it ends. Next slide, please. This is Gaza. What we do in the beginning is we cut Gaza in half. This is me in Gaza. We're standing about more or less over there. We cut Gaza in half, and we come into the northern part, deal with the northern part, then deal with the central part and the southern part. Okay? Next slide, please. When we go in, our mission is to destroy the Hamas and get the hostages. They take 240 hostages with them. Babies that are not even a year old, young women, young children, old people, men, women, whoever they manage to grab, and bodies. They also took the bodies of dead people. Why? Because they understand us enough to understand that according to Jewish ritual, you have to bury the body in a certain way and within a certain time, and this is a bargaining chip as far as they're concerned. When we get into Gaza, we understand that we're actually fighting in two different planes. One plane, besides the air and whatever, there's what you see above ground, and then there's endless amounts of tunnels. I'm talking about hundreds and hundreds of miles of tunnels that they built. I'll talk more about those tunnels in a few minutes. What do we do before we go in? We are being accused of practicing genocide. One of our problems nowadays when we discuss almost anything is that we don't really bother to understand what we're talking about. Genocide means, the definition of genocide is trying to annihilate a people because they belong to a certain group, religion, or whatever, and you indiscriminately kill them. What happened on the 7th was genocide. They didn't manage to kill that. They killed 1,400 people, but it's still, that's what their intent was. They went to kill Jews. They didn't go to kill IDF soldiers. They went to kill Jews. What Israel is doing is not genocide. Why? Because we're after the Hamas. And so we notified the civilian population through their cell phones, and we dropped leaflets and said, if you're not a combatant, leave. This is where you leave. We dropped them maps that they'll know where to go, and you guys can get out. We have no quarrel with the Palestinian people. We have a quarrel with the Hamas. So we provided protection for the humanitarian passageway. Why? Because the Hamas they didn't want them to leave. Because if they leave, then the IDF can go all out on what's left. So they were shooting their own people. We had to protect the Palestinians from the Hamas so that they can get out of where they were.
Come on.
And also, there's humanitarian aid and so on. For those of you who are in the military, it's a little bit more clear. But me as a field officer, I just can't say, bomb that building. I can say, I want the building bombed, and I put it into a pipeline, basically. And then there's 7 layers of decision that's above my rank. That's not above my rank, but above my command. And they have to okay it. If they see that they're civilians, then they override me. So I'm 45 years, whatever, in the Army. A lieutenant colonel, if there's some sergeant over there along the way who has an aerial view of it and says, no, there's civilians there, he says, no, it doesn't happen. For those of you who are military, just so there's a clause there, I can call for something called a lightning strike, and then legally, it is my responsibility. If I say lightning strike, all those 7 layers disappear, and they do whatever I tell them to. But if in the end I did something that's a war crime, let's say, then I am legally responsible. Once I say those 2 words, it's my personal responsibility. The Army won't take responsibility. The other system, the Army takes responsibility. Next slide, please. Can you please play this slide? This is an old man who has received aid. You can see him. And these guys are from the Hamas, and they stopped him, and they're stealing all of his food. And then other people are taking advantage of it. This is the problem with humanitarian aid, and I'll talk about that more later. But what you hear about that all the time. Tell your officials, if this is money that you people paid for, each one of you, this is taxpayer money, which is being given for humanitarian aid. In normal times, a kilo, 2.2 pounds of flour costs 5 shekels. Right? Now it costs 75 shekels. Who's selling it? The Hamas, because they steal it. But they shouldn't be selling it at all, because they just got it for free, because you paid for it already.
Hang on a minute. So what you just said right there, for clarity, is Hamas is stealing the humanitarian food that America is sending to the refugees in Gaza, and they're selling it back to them 15 times the amount.
Yes. 15 times, yeah, 15 times. Eggs, for example, they sell at 10 shekels one, when it usually costs 1 shekel. So they're only making it 10%.
1,000%.
A markup, yeah. This has to do with some of these tunnels. Over here, they built a tunnel. This is inside of a house. They took this door, you can see, is falling down into the tunnel. They made this wench, yeah? And they are taking the sand out. They keep it in the sandbag so we won't be able to see it. This window that you see over there is that window that you see over there. And this is inside of the building. Here you can see that there are bombs, and these are junction boxes for the detonation coils. There, over here is a tunnel, this one over here, and then there's another one that goes out over there, and another one that goes out over there. I can say, from my personal observation, 100% of the houses that I went into in Gaza, 100% of them had either tunnels, ordnance, or some military position. This house is going to be blown up in a few minutes. We're going to blow it up because it's a military position. It's somebody's house, but they let it become a military position. Did any of you see the TV series Fauda? No. You've heard of it, okay. So there was a very famous actor who plays in it who was wounded. It's part of their team. 2 days after this photograph was taken, that team, everybody you see here is either dead or in the hospital. Can you, the next slide, please? These tunnels, it's insane. This is a small tunnel, but you can see it's cement. Everything is cement. Everything is cemented. This is a larger tunnel. Then you have tunnels that are larger than that you can drive a truck into. And they also make them look nice, you can see. What happened over here is that this is one of the places where they held the prisoners, the hostages that they took. And so they put in a cage over here. Can you please play the video? Here we understand that we're blowing this up, but the tunnels are so extensive that all of that gets blown up. We didn't plan on that. We just planned on that.
Wow.
This piece over here.
Play that again if you can.
So it just travels down the tunnels.
Yes, because of the type of explosives. Those of you who are military and understand this stuff, this is emulsive, the type of explosive we're using over here. Okay? Next slide, please. Israel is not in post-trauma. Israel is in trauma. We simply don't understand what's going on. I can tell you the first time I came home, I just sat in the couch, looked at the wall, and did nothing else. My wife comes up and says, "You want something to eat?" "No, I'm okay." Comes back 10 minutes later, "You want some coffee?" He said, No, I'm okay. The whole country is in trauma. We're in trauma for several different reasons. Reason number one is the brutality. What I saw on the 8th of October, I simply don't understand. And as I said, this is my fourth wall. I've seen a lot of carnage in my life. This, I don't understand. I simply don't understand when there are children present and whatever, I'm going to spare you details, but just when somebody intentionally kills an infant in their crib, you have to be some type of something that doesn't fit into anything that I can understand as being a human being. I just don't understand it. So that's one thing. The other thing is that they managed to break in. The Israeli army considers itself to be a very good army, and how did the system fail? That's another problem. And the death toll, and the communities that have been destroyed, all of this together is a really big issue. So what's one of the big issues? The communities around there and around the northern top of Israel, the Lebanese-Syrian border, they've all been evacuated. So there are 1 million Palestinians who are refugees down in the southern part of Gaza. Their situation is really bad. Excuse me. And their situation is much worse than the Israeli evacuees. There's 300,000 of them. They're not in their homes. They're not in their businesses. They're not in their schools. They've been moved because the Hezbollah, I told you, it's not only Hamas. It's Hamas, Hezbollah, Lebanon, Syria. Everybody's shooting at us. Eilat, the Houthis in Eilat. It's all of it together. And so there are 300,000 of them. Their lives are topsy-turvy. The school kids, these are kids that went through COVID, and now they're going through this. Right? I don't know what's going to happen with that generation of children. So that's one big issue. So, the communities themselves, what happens when they go back? Kfar Aza, the pictures that I showed you beforehand, one of the things that they're talking about, they lost 70 people. The families want to put up memorials. So you're going to be walking around, it's this tiny little community. You're going to be walking around, it's going to be an open-air mausoleum. How do you build a community where every place you look, somebody was butchered? How do you deal with that? My kibbutz was captured in 1948. There were 70 members, 30 of them were killed, but it was a war. But 30 of them were killed, 28 of them were taken prisoners of war, And then the remainders weren't there that day and whatever. And the kibbutz somehow got back together, but it never really survived, and it disbanded in 1961. So the people who are living there now, myself included, were not from that generation because the community couldn't survive that. Right? They were also survivors of the Holocaust. The hostages. There's 134 hostages being held in Gaza. The Red Cross is not allowed to visit them. Nobody's allowed to visit them. We don't know if they're alive or dead. We have no idea. Now, there was a lot of sexual violence that happened at the beginning. There could be young women there who are actually pregnant 6 months down the road, carrying their abuser's child. And they're not getting any medical care. That's besides the fact. What do you do? And now people, there's a big question if we're going to enter or not enter Rafah, the southern tip of Gaza. There's a military question there, but it doesn't really matter. It's really simple. You don't want us to go in? Give us the hostages.
Come on.
That's all. You want this to end? Give us the hostages. They're not soldiers. They're not combatants. They're not POWs. They're hostages. You took them out of their bedrooms in their pajamas. That's what you did. Don't tell me that a 9-month-old baby is a POW. If that child is alive. We have no idea how many people are alive. And the next thing is anti-Semitism. The Hamas comes in, does what it does, and Israel is being accused of genocide. I was in Germany last week. Every place I went, I had police protection. And I told my German audience, the problem isn't mine, the problem is yours. And if I was a Hamas speaker, there would be no police outside. I, as a Jew, if somebody thinks that they demonstrate against me in the streets and excuse the abuse of the women of Israel as a legitimate act of resistance, and you think that you're going to persuade me, no. What you're going to do is you're going to make me hunker down and I'm going to buy a lot more guns than I have right now. That's what's going to happen. You are not going to kill me again. It's not going to happen. It's real simple. And I'm 65 years old. I could have finished the army 20 years ago, and I did more than my fair share of everything. But I'm still in the army because my family was completely and totally annihilated in the Holocaust. That's not going to happen as long as I breathe. And this anti-Semitism all it does is gets me more defensive. So, and what it also does is it makes it clear to me, can you move the next slide, please? Is that there is a need for a Jewish state. I don't trust anybody. I don't trust the US, I don't trust England, and I don't trust France, and I don't trust Russia, and I don't trust anybody at all. History teaches me that I cannot. So I need a Jewish state. In Israel, we still have the internal conflicts that we had before, just like you guys have, left, right, blue, red. We have the regional conflicts that have nothing, some of that has nothing at all to do with us, but it becomes part of us. And one of the things that's going to change in Israel right now is that we thought that we could have a small, smart army. Turns out that we can't. We need a bread and butter army. When I was a young officer, we had 34 tank divisions and 12 of them were active. Now we have 12 altogether and 4 of them are active. And so that's going to change. And, for example, one of the things that's happening is that now we are restocking the army with weapons. They're derivatives of the AR-15, but we're not buying them from here. We're going to have Israeli-made stuff. Why? American politics. We don't know what's going to be. Gaza. People cannot live without hope. I've spent my life doing peace projects. I've done a lot of peace projects in Gaza. You name the topic, I probably did it. From microfinancing for women's economics, music, sports, I probably did it all. I want the people of Gaza to have hope. If you have a neighbor who has hope and has nothing, then it's not going to be a good neighbor. I want them to have hope. I want them to have a life. I want them to have an economy. It is in my interest that they have an economy. But if I leave it up to them, there's a problem. So when the U.S. is going to give money to rebuild Gaza, you have to tell your elected officials, every single penny that we give to them, it gets audited. We give them a pound of cement, we get to see where it goes.
Amen.
We give them a foot of wire, we get to see where it goes. Because if not, it's going to go into those tunnels. That's what it's going to.
That's right. That's right, Amos.
The Hamas is not a partner for us. Why? Because it's very simple. I read documents of the Hamas. What they say is that they're going to want to destroy Israel and kill the Jews. They don't see any option of living side by side with us, so they can't be my partner. It has to be something else. And for that to happen, we have to do something about their educational system. There's a common thread, and that's Iran. The U.S., along with everybody else, is letting Iran do basically whatever it wants. You want to stop all of this? Somebody go after Iran. Tell Iran, no, this isn't we don't accept this as international behavior of a nation state in the international arena. We don't accept it. You can't do this stuff. Everybody knows that they're doing it. Now, it's not that I know because I'm privy to intelligence. The Houthis, the guys who are shooting, the Yemenite guys who are shooting in the Gulf, they say that they're trained by the Iranians. Russia says that they are getting weapons from Iran. Nobody's hiding it. You want this to end? Deal with Iran. I talked about anti-Semitism and so on. Me, personally, when I study international politics, I'm very worried right now. I think that we're on the verge of World War III. Why? Because if we look at history, when the nations start separating into blocks, those blocks go to war. And right now, because of what is happening in Russia and Europe, with Russia attacking Ukraine, everybody is on a spending spree of buying weapons. Billions and billions and billions of dollars of weapons are being bought all around the globe. People buy billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars of weapons. Somebody is going to use them. And so this is something that worries me a lot. And there's things that can happen that won't make it happen, but whatever, you get the idea. Okay.
We have about five
okay,
minutes.
That's it.
You can stand. I'd like you to stand and just stretch your hands out. I'm going to ask Amos to be in the kitchen. So if obviously he doesn't have a lot of time before second service begins. If you'd like to stay over, feel free to do that. If you want another round. But one of the things that he blew through that I thought was extremely important, some of the literature that they found in the schools that they went through in Gaza, and they read a math question. And the math question is, if you have 30 Jews and you kill 12, how many do you have left over that you have to kill? That's what they've been saturating generation after generation. If you teach that in school, that's why the education, that's why everything that we heard today, my purpose, you may say, Pastor Jim, why did you have this happen? We need to know strategically what to pray for and how to combat in spiritual warfare. And I'm going to ask Amos, he's going to leave me his entire family line and those individuals, and I'm going to have them for us next Sunday on the table for a target prayer list so that we can pray covering and protection upon him and his troops and the whole nation. Pray for the peace of Israel like we never have before. But stretch your hands out this morning. Father, I come before you Yahweh, and I ask today that you'll reach down and Lord, it's kind of fruitless at this point to pray for the peace of Israel because of what's happened, but Lord, you're a mighty God, and you can do great and mighty things that we know not of. Father, you can change things in a second that we can't change in decades as man. Lord, I thank you for our friend, Amos Davidowitz. I thank you for his boldness to come here and to do this presentation and to be bold. It's in Klamath Falls, it may not be very dangerous, but I pray protection around him as he travels through the rest of the United States. Lord, that there will be safety teams and there will be things that will protect him while he does not share propaganda. He shares the truth of what happened. Father, we bless him right now, and we bless all of Israel right now. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you for joining us. A special thank you to those of you that give generously to this ministry. It is because of you that this ministry is possible. You can click the link in the description to give now or visit refugecity.church for more information on how you can become a part of that team. If you've enjoyed the podcast, you can subscribe, you can share it with your friends, you can take a screenshot and share it on your social stories, and make sure to tag us at Refuge City Church. Thanks for listening.